but not as much. It wasn't quite as volatile as things in the 1970s. If you look in the 1970s, the economy was much more volatile. That's the old economy. Remember the old economy? We're going to talk about that in a moment. Moving right along. I'm going to skip the Purchasing Managers Index for a minute and get right to labor productivity. Once again, labor productivity just goes north. Not very interesting. But if you look at the rate of change, well, that is a little more interesting. And take a look at the rate of change after 1995. Not bad, right? Rate of change in productivity after 1995 is up there around, 3% a year, maybe, something like that. By the way, for all the talk of the new economy, is that really an all-time high? There were other periods when productivity did pretty well. How about the early 60s? Did pretty well, didn't it? So, for all we say about the new economy, it's not like it's unprecedented. However, you can see there are some periods when productivity did not behave as strongly as recently. We're going to talk about that. But first, once again, what is our synonym for productivity?
Efficiency.
Efficiency. And that's output per unit of input. So, give me an example. Okay. I'll start, and then you give me another example. Here's one. How about miles per gallon? Miles is just distance. Miles per gallon is efficiency, isn't it? Give me another example of productivity in a common setting, of a measure of efficiency in a common setting. Miles per gallon is one. Give me another.
Cost per ton of steel.
Okay. Now, the problem is with the cost, that's the flip side.
Okay.
It's the flip side. It's not quite output per unit of input. It's more like how much input per unit of output. We're going to get to that, by the way. Can anyone think of another measure aside from miles per gallon? Now,
Publications per professor.
publications per professor. Or how about students per class or something like that, But we're getting far afield, right? So, now, let me ask you this. Assuming you don't have a Lamborghini, when you depress the accelerator of your car 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, does your car become, with respect to fuel efficiency, does it become more or less efficient? Less. Does it go faster?
Yep.
So that we get more miles, don't we? I mean, it's not like we stop, but it just takes more gallons to go the miles, doesn't it? Now, sometimes it's worth it. You're in a hurry. You have to pass a car. Why does your car become more efficient when you go 50, 60, 70, 80 miles, 90 miles an hour? Why? Because the engine is of limited size, right? You don't have, in other words, you push down on the accelerator, the engine doesn't get bigger, does it? You try to force more fuel through it, but it doesn't deal with the fuel as well at a high rate of speed. It doesn't combust the fuel, right? It doesn't burn the fuel as well at a high rate of speed as it did at a lower rate of speed. So there's an ideal speed, right? Maybe 40, 50 miles an hour. Because if you're going 5 miles an hour, it's not very efficient either. But 40, 50 is pretty good. Now, can we think about a problem like that in economic terms, in industrial terms? And Keith, sure. Here's another example. And this is from industry. Suppose you are suppose you're the chairman of Toyota, and suppose your sales are strong. Matter of fact, there's a particular model, and I can't think of one now because I'm not familiar. But suppose there's one model that's doing real well, and so let's say, on the other hand, you're the manager of Bethlehem Steel. And so now the manager of Toyota calls you. You're now the manager of Bethlehem Steel and says, look, our whatever it is doing real well. Sales are strong. We need a shipment of steel, an additional shipment right away. Well, what are you going to say? You're going to say, oh, we're really busy right now. Why don't you come back during the next recession when things are kind of slow around here, and we're happy to ship. No, you can't say that because you will have lost your best customer, right? So you say, oh, we'll move heaven and earth. We'll get that shipment out to you just as soon as we can. Now, you're busy, but Toyota's your best customer. So what next? Let's say you've been running your mill, your steel mill. Let's say you've been running your steel mill 16 hours a day, 2 8-hour shifts. And the other 8 hours a day is maintenance. You inspect, you maintain, you repair the equipment. Now, you don't have time to inspect, maintain, repair the equipment now. You've got to hurry to get that steel out. So you tell your maintenance crew to have a seat, and you bring in another production crew. And now you're running the mill around the clock. 24/7, as they say. Now, how much of an increase in production labor time was that? How much of an increase in percentage terms was that when you went from 16 to 24 hours a day? And remember, the base here is 16, not 24. So how much of an increase was that in percentage terms when you added 8 hours and you went from 16 to 24 hours a day? 50% increase, everybody. 50% increase. Let's say the output of the mill has increased by 30%. The labor time has increased by 50. The output's increased by 30. Well, why did the output only increase by 30, the labor time increased by 50? Well, you haven't had time to inspect, maintain, and repair the equipment. So what happens? It breaks down. And your maintenance crew, which is now your repair crew, does have to rush in and repair it. But meantime, of course, that particular end of the mill isn't running while it's being repaired, right? And so your production workers aren't doing anything. They're getting paid. They're not doing anything. A few hours, the mill is up and running. Now, did you get more output out of your mill this week? Yes. 30% more. That was necessary. On the other hand, did it take a more than or a disproportionate increase in labor time?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Are you willing to do it nonetheless?
Yes.
Of course, because Toyota is your best customer. And even if you don't make a nickel on this order, you will on the next order. Does everybody understand? So you're willing to do it.